current information.
It should be through April, right?
Yeah, but
That's fine.
I think I put May on or June on my email. I don't know what I was thinking. But yes, it's through the end of April. That's the last
I knew
month
what
that
you
I
were
was
thinking.
able.
We're always
Thank
working
you.
in a different year and a different month.
Yeah, exactly.
Always.
So, this information is a little bit, it's a month old, so we have some more, I should have some more current information here shortly. Let's see here. Okay. So again, this is for the month ending April 30th. At the top is this is a total of all the funds. So, our April receipts were greater than our expenditures. Our year-to-date receipts are greater than our expenditures, so we're doing, well in those two areas. We're looking better. If you look in the right-hand column there in prior year, we're looking better. We have a little greater room there than we did last year. We had $540,954 last year, so we're doing better this year. Down at the general fund, again, we're doing well. In April, our receipts were greater than our expenditures. Our year-to-date column for general fund, again, we're doing well. Receipts are greater than expenditures. And we're, again, doing better than we were even, last year. So we're doing, it just looks to me like we're moving in the right direction. We're doing things the right way. At the bottom, one thing I want to note, again, I was kind of hesitant to give out this information because, again, this is a whole month old. So I made this information, instead of making this as of April 30th, I made this information as of May 30th to give the most current picture I can give you on income taxes. So as of May 30th this year, we're at $441,576, and last year we were at $533,042.64 at this time. However, Rita, the note below that says Rita will be sending an additional $71,700 within the next week for May collections, and Yvonne just called me and said that we see another, was it 8,000? Another 8,000 in just one day that Rita has collected. So I think what my point is, what we need to keep in mind is that last year, people were coming into this office and they were making payments, so it was going directly into the computer. And so now the payments are, being mailed to Rita, and then Rita has to process them, and then Rita, gathers all that money for 1 month and then sends it to us. So there again is a timing lag. So I think that, before we start to worry about that number, I think that we're right on target and that everything's okay, and I'm not concerned about it. So that's where
Yeah, it definitely just seems to be a different pattern of collection
Sure.
now than
the
previously.
timing, the timing is different.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the pattern just because I haven't seen it enough years in a row.
Sure.
I suspect that 10 months out of the year are somewhat similar, and March and April are pretty heavy months.
Yeah, that's, I would actually say probably April and May are probably heavy months, because I think for a while there, people in Greenhills, and I say I think because I wasn't here, but I think that a lot of people were not making their tax payments until they thought that the deadline was the end of the last day of April for some reason.
It was at one time.
Okay.
It was at one time. It used to be April 30th.
Okay. And so I think, and then, I think people even came in, a couple of weeks after that. So I think that April and May were, probably two really busy months. And, so anyway, I just wanted to add that because I didn't want anybody to really panic when they see that number and think that it's a real problem. I don't think that's a problem. Up until, I think April, we have been ahead every single month in income tax collections until we got to that point. And I think, again, it's just it's the timing difference.
Is there any way we could get a visual on that? Sorry. In other words, can we graph that out year after year and see how it tracks? Because we're kind of looking at a narrow window, and we're making some assumptions with Rita, and it seems like it would be good to see where our peaks and valleys are and do a comparison that way.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm trying to make it easier for you too. Because even with that, even with the 71,000, and you said an additional 8, was that part of the 71,000?
No.
I mean, that puts us at 521. It's less than last year. I mean, not by much.
Right, but if that keeps up every day for the next month or so.
That was
Right.
8,000 in one day.
Oh, okay.
One
Okay.
day.
Okay.
So we're talking, yeah.
Okay.
And also too, you know, we have some of the residents who live here in Greenhills downstairs, you know, like Connie and Brenda. They were checking to see if their income taxes were processed yet. And I can't even remember right now if they've been processed as of now, but for, you know, several weeks they were checking and checking Rita's website. And what they mailed in, their tax papers had not even yet been processed. So I think, you know what I mean, I think that Rita has a bunch that just
Sure.
haven't yet been processed, and so, like
And
I
do
said,
they-
I'm not
and-
worried.
I mean, is that a phone call and find out? I mean, it
Well-
still seems a little bit vague, like, can't we know how much is processed, or do we just wait and see? Is that the?
Well, I don't know if they can
Yeah.
I
tell
mean,
us.
if they got a stack of
Yeah,
stuff
I don't-
here, they may
right.
not know who,
Yeah.
Okay.
what's
I
in
would-
it and who, is it all Green Hills, and
Yeah.
is it refunds, or is it checks, or whatever?
It's just
Yeah.
better to wait it out and see
Yeah,
what
I
happens.
think maybe as something we might be good to talk about, like in 2 months, is, are we satisfied with the job Rita's doing? We're now, you know, 6 months into it or whatever, and are we satisfied? Are they doing a good job? Was the turnaround quick enough? You know, did someone send a check in April 1st and, you know, we didn't see the money till June 1st, or, you know, were they meeting the performance standards that we think they should?
And there might be a village perspective on that as well. In other words, I know they had some bugs they were working out, but just how does the average citizen view it, and, you know, what's their take on it?
And I do wanna just comment, cause Kim actually and I had the same conversation yesterday,
Mhm.
with Rita, that it is the kind of thing that we're gonna have to give it a couple of years,
Sure.
literally, because there are things that they're gonna be able to do that they have not even started yet, because at the time they
Okay.
picked up, we were immediately going to quarterly payments, and you know, I think they have a good system, and the one thing, again, that I'm fine as long as we keep seeing this nice even keel come in, because really, for the village, that's good too. It used to be slow, big, then slow,
Mhm.
slow.
Right.
You know, if you didn't have it by the end of May, you probably weren't gonna get much, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So as long as we keep seeing that monthly steady pace, we
Mhm.
should be okay, and that's what I'm gonna be looking for. rather
Yeah.
And
than-
Rita
Mhm.
did inform us that it takes a full 3 years to get on
Mm.
their full cycle,
Okay.
to where they're collecting every piece of information they can from the federal, I don't know if they collect from the state, so that they get in sync and they get all that information, and they're finding people, you know, through getting federal tax information as well. And I know that, you know, that so far, you know, Rita has been contacting some people about payment that had not been recently contacted in many years. So you know, just based upon the information I have,
That's
yeah, I think
Mhm.
if they've already reached out and located these people, that's, you know, a pretty good sign in my opinion, so.
Sure. No, I mean, I think, I'm excited not only on this front, but there's a number of fronts where it's gonna take some time, like you said,
Mhm.
and I think it's a very good thing.
So I think kind of a synopsis statement might be that we're behind where we were prior year, but we're not concerned because there's some seasonality to it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. On the 441 that we've collected, is there any ability for us to tell how much is from individuals that live in the village versus people that work in the village? And reason, I'm wondering from an economic development standpoint, if like, I don't work in the village, well, I do for $2,000 a year. But if the employment base is rising in the village, that's a positive thing from an economic development standpoint, and if it's shrinking, that's not a good thing from an economic development standpoint. And just trying to figure out if we, through tax, we can figure out whether that's going up or down.
Almost like a projection off of that? Or?
Yeah, or what's our trend line?
Right.
You know, and
Well, and there's two things. It's not just employment, but it's also income, right? In other words, you could have same number of people
working,
employed,
but they're just making less
either
dollars.
making less over a period of time or
Right,
hopefully
right.
more.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if that's possible or not. I'm not trying to create work, but I think it might be important for us to know that, you know, to have some perspective on that. And
I came across a demographic chart of Greenhills, and that's an interesting one as well. The part
as
of-
far as age and
Mhm.
average income and all that,
Yeah.
it's
Maybe-
in the comprehensive plan.
Maybe I could, this one did well. It was age on the bottom bar, and
We're actually younger than the average Hamilton County resident.
seriously,
Yeah.
huh,
Not by much,
yeah.
but we are, so that's kind of interesting, because I would not have guessed that. Not because I just had a birthday. It's just-
How old are you? What about the estate tax?
Going away this year.
No, I know, but I mean, right.
We haven't gotten anything in the last month, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason I mention that is, are we counting on, if that's been averaging, and that's a tough thing to average, I realize it, but,
We have not been including any significant amount in our budgets for years,
Okay.
because it is not something that you
Yeah, I
can
think
depend on. Those
prior
are-
years we've used 40,000, am I correct, in the budget?
I don't
Yeah,
know
probably.
that, I don't know that number offhand.
I think so. One of the things that, I think we need to get through refinancing some debt, we need to get through the taxes, but one of the things I'd like this group to look at is, and don't panic yet, Kim.
Okay.
yeah,
Maybe looking at a 5 or a 6 year budget, and not necessarily the expense side for what's it gonna cost for police, or what's it gonna cost for streets and roads or whatever. I'd be happy with, using, you know, a 3% increase each year on that, just for an inflation trend. But looking at that with the various bond payments versus our income, what we have coming, to see how painful is the pain coming.
and was that 2014, 2015?
2016 is the
2016
biggest.
is the
Okay.
biggest, yeah.
Data drops.
And-
So we can, if you want, maybe you and I can work on that a little bit together. And I don't wanna start it yet, I think we've got some other things that we need to finish.
So, if we have our surplus there, I'm just thinking in terms of knowing that 2016's coming, are we designating money towards 2016?
Well, we have,
Does that make sense?
Yes.
yeah, we're trying to build fund balances in every fund, so that if something catastrophic happened, we would have a reserve, just
Sure,
like
Sure.
Mhm.
Oil
my
reserves.
house has an emergency fund, that if
Yeah.
I couldn't go to work for 3 months, we could cover the bills.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of responsible planning. But to the extent that we sell properties right now, we've designated that money for retirement of debt. So we don't sell a property for $40,000 and then go buy a police car with it.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
so-
And that's why I guess
and-
I'm trying to figure so that we don't lose sight of that. And do we know how much is needed to cover 2016?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have that.
and that's what, we just have to, I mean, we've got the bond payments for each series of bonds.
Right.
But what I wanna do is just sit down and plug those numbers in and get it all on one page.
Okay.
But we are most definitely reserving money in non-voted debt
Okay.
for that big moment.
Right,
And-
but
and-
for me, right now, it's a little bit abstract. I know we've looked at the numbers, but I didn't know, like, okay, we need X to
Mhm.
flow through that.
There's a chart.
And it's the non-voted debt that's the big issue,
Right.
This is a-
because
this is
the
a
voted
total
debt, you
of-
pick up the
this
taxes
is-
every year.
Mhm.
This is a total of all the debt that we'll have to pay in 2016, and actually 2017 15 is our,
too.
yeah,
They're almost identical.
yeah, they are. But that's a combination, voted and non-voted.
Okay,
And the concern is on the voted debt, you pay your property tax, and that voted debt is in that property tax. The non-voted debt is not. It has to be paid for from other sources of revenue.
and so at some point we would know, we'd have that broken out.
It already is.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are, they're just not added together, but these are voted,
Okay,
these are non-voted,
got
and
it.
voted. Yeah.
I'm sure I've seen
Yeah, that probably was in your council packet
And actually,
for
we're
the,
gonna work for next year, right?
it. Okay.
And, when we get through our tax budget, it's in there as well. So we have some extras to do
Yeah,
there.
that's
okay,
true.
so,
Hopefully
this
ours
looks
change.
good. I'll try to digest some of this, and if we have any questions, we'll just give you a buzz. All right, let's talk about refi of the Series 96 and 97 bond debt. I know you guys work like champs on this. And for whatever reason, initially, they couldn't understand what we wanted. And I think that our goals were to refinance the debt, not extend the term, reduce the rate, and make sure that we could handle cash flow. I think those were the kind of tenets that we put down in the ground for them. So,
One more
Yeah,
time.
so,
yeah,
Just repeat that again. I know we didn't.
not extend the term,
Right, that was
reduce the rate,
address cash flow.
and then, yeah, make sure we can handle cash flow. So,
Okay, so the top sheet is just a copy of the resolution, if anybody was interested in reviewing that, and then, the next two little packets that are stapled together are the actual, agreement from PNC that they have sent over.
okay, yeah.
And then the next page is, I'm sorry, I didn't realize how difficult this was to read until I already had it done, but, this will show us our current payments. The first, chart there is our current payments, so you can see just in 2012, our current payment, $203,647.50. And then if you move over to the next, the darker chart in the middle there, our new payment will actually be $180,271.55. So we're seeing an annual savings this year of $23,375.95. And then in the next column, the total savings over the entire life is $124,668. So
That's a little confusing when he labeled it semi-annual total savings. I'm thinking, are we saving this
I know.
much every half year, or is
Yeah,
this
I
the
know.
total savings
And I think
of the
that's-
term of the debt, which it
yeah.
is?
Yeah.
It's just total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that just gives you a picture of, what we're
That's a
looking at.
good thing.
What we're looking at saving here. And although we are saving a little less by making semi-annual payments, I do think for cash flow purposes and the way that our, tax money comes in semi-annually from the county, I think it makes sense to do semi-annual payments rather than monthly.
Yep. And we're okay jumping on this first one? Because if we didn't do anything, our first payment would be, or our traditional payment would be in December for these two bonds, right?
Mhm.
And our first one will actually be July 1st.
Yeah.
So, but we're okay to cover the July 1st one from a
Yeah.
cash standpoint?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. This is very exciting, and, kind of one of the goals that we wanted to look at, so.
It might be worth noting that our existing bond council, that's our findings, they looked at it too and did deal, gave us a good deal for us, yeah.
In the email, is Is there a reason that we would use Todd Cooper instead of Brad?
Well, here's my feeling. My feeling is we should go with Brad because he is so much cheaper. However, from what I understand, there is a long history with Todd Cooper, and there's a certain trust, I guess, that the village has always found in Todd Cooper. And so I didn't know if we would be damaging any type of relationship with Todd Cooper or how much that, means. That was the only thing I was thinking. Is based upon what I have heard, Todd Cooper has always done our bonds and,
I know, there's.
You gotta be, in my business, you gotta be good. You gotta be damn good, quite frankly, to be twice as much as somebody and keep.
Right.
I agree. I just wanted to bring that to
I
your
don't-
attention.
No, but
that
Do you have a
that's-
comfort level with Brad from a professional standpoint?
I have
And
never
they're
done
Peck
business
Schaefer,
with
right?
Brad, but
Yeah.
they're with Peck Schaefer, which
I've
they
always
have.
worked with Peck Schaefer.
Yeah.
Not with Brad,
But
Brandon Weimer, but they were very, very good.
for $6,250, if I can't hear some reason that Todd's $6,250 better, I don't know how we could.
Well, especially now more than ever. The only thing I would say is sometimes I like giving the other person the opportunity to talk to why they are what they are. It gives them a chance to adjust, and I'm not sure we want to do that, but sometimes, you can buy very, very cheap car insurance, but just don't ever have an accident, So, and I know it gets tougher in this kind of thing to know what you're getting value-wise. But I think what you're asking is an excellent question. Those kind of questions I think should be asked.
Right.
Otherwise, sometimes pay me now or pay me later.
Right.
But you're right, that's a significant difference.
Well, why don't you guys just research that a little bit, and if you feel there's a reason to stay with Todd, let me know, and we'll discuss it at the council meeting Tuesday.
And I'm not trying to rush us, but this is something that Chip kind of needs an answer on, like, right now.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, we're well aware of that.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't want to be presumptuous, but is it safe to say that the Finance Committee is recommending that we refinance the 96 and 97 bond debt?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that unanimous?
Yes.
All right. I will let council know that it's the Finance Committee's recommendation to do such. Great. Hey, thank you. Sometimes I get going and I get remiss on thanking people for their hard work. And this was one where we took the time to make sure we got it right.
Well, it's interesting, if we would have gone with the first, remember the numbers weren't what we asked for?
Right. Yep. Took the time to get it right. So that's good.
So what else can we do to save $124,000?
That's over 6 years. Yeah, it's 20
We've got another bond
something
coming
years.
up in September.
Yeah, we've got another one to look at in September, but we can't do anything till these things, so.
Yeah, right.
You wanna talk about 2013 budget and income projections?
Sure. Okay, well, our charter requires that we present this to you on or before July 1st, which is the reason we have this preliminary in front of you today. I can say that at this point in time, the auditor, they gave us some very rough projections on our levies only, but I think even that stands to be corrected as they update their figures as well. But we were working from those. All of them did show a decrease in what will be coming to us even in those levies. It varied from just a few $100s to a few $1,000 on the different levies, so that it'll either be a matter we do without or we pick up some of that cost in general fund. So those are some of the decisions we have to make. There might be some sections that you see that are not completed. That's because we simply don't have the data yet. But just a little clarification here, the first two columns, those are actuals for 2010 and 2011. Current is based on our appropriated numbers. And then 13 is what we're projecting at this point for the tax budget. Again, between now and probably mid-July, they will, mid to late July, they'll send us some additional figures that'll give us a lot more guidance in terms of what we need here, so we know what we have to work with.
I know this is frustrating for me because this is like bad data, and but we're not really making any decisions. We're just complying with charter requirements.
Right.
And if I don't remember, I hope someone would remind the mayor when they do the charter commission that maybe this is something that they look at and
What makes more sense?
yeah, do we have the wrong date for the due date?
Do we have a
for this?
proposed date that it should happen?
Well, it has to be to the county typically by July 20th. We don't get the numbers in from the county until July, so it's really a last minute kind of rush situation, unfortunately, but that's, that's
So
the
we need to have
county.
the county change.
Yeah, exactly, so if we can talk some
All right,
sense
get that
into
done
them.
there, Jeff, and
I think that's a Maria area.
Yeah, it does make it tough for us. I'm just trying to think if there's anything at this point worth pointing out, only because almost every figure you see is going to change a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's a new format from last year.
Oh,
If
yes,
we hadn't
and
mentioned
thank
that.
you, Kim.
We,
Yeah.
we did not go with the handwritten booklets that we have been seeing in the past.
Remember that?
Thank you. Oh my God.
The stone and chisel.
So,
Yes, and I
Compliments
sent
to Kim.
this to the county and asked if they would, well, first of all, I asked if they had an electronic format that I could use, and they said no, but we would like you to use an electronic format. So, I did some work to figure this out and come up with
Maybe we
this,
could
and
sell it
so,
to
yeah, right. And so I sent this format to them and asked them if this was, what they were looking for, and if this would work for their purposes. And I got back a yes, it looks fine, so
okay.
hopefully it will all be fine.
let me just point out, as you do look through these things, some of the crazy things that come to mind that you're gonna see, for example, in the golf course, some huge carryover. Don't be fooled by that. What happens is we transfer money into those accounts. That makes those accounts look big, and then at the year.
Right.
So that's,
Yeah.
without this current year's,
We're gonna have a party
Expenditure
when the
stuff
golf
is-
course becomes profitable.
Yeah.
yes. That's the one I can remember is the most drastic in that regard, but there might be other ones too, we're not really gonna be proposing that kind of a carryover, it just comes up that way now in the numbers.
It's a great format though, I mean, you can see everything at a glance.
Yeah, I thought it was much easier for the eyes to see and to understand.
Now one thing, jumping ahead just a little bit, but in a figure on the very first page, under real estate tax, the 350, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but that figure does currently include the portion of the levy that's up this year. Our levies are split into several different little pieces, so that does reflect the piece. We're counting it in right now. If council wants to change that later on, we can change that accordingly, but right now it's reflected as being in there. You see we put in income tax lower, much lower. Kim and I are both very conservative. So we have that at 950. Hopefully by the time year end, we're gonna feel more comfortable to bump that up, but
I think you're
at this
doing the
point
right
in
thing.
time, a number of things do go away. Local government, we have totally zero inheritance now. Unfortunately, that'll be totally zero. And there's other little pieces of some of the tax things that go away too that are hard to identify. Might just be a few hundred here, a few hundred there that will be part of totals that we used to have.
What's in special assessments?
That is when we have, like grass cutting, of which we had
Oh.
none last year. We do actually expect to
I
have
mean, additional.
those this year.
No, if foreclosed property or something,
Oh, okay.
and
We
we,
cut the
we cut
grass.
the grass and send them.
Yeah, there's at least 3 or 4 that we're doing on a regular basis right now, so those will be ones that go against that. We will, it's an expense, but then we collect the revenue back through the taxes.
So if I cut the grass of a vacant property, I'm stealing from the village because they can collect it from there.
Well,
Well, not really, it's just we hope to be
It's a-
compensated, you won't be.
I know.
But feel free to, because we also run the risk
I
of
have
not
already.
collecting it. I mean, there's always that chance if the property is a tax foreclosure, that we will
Right.
not get our money back, but
Right.
that's,
Well, how does that work from, I know that, I don't understand it from a real estate standpoint, why they wouldn't be on that themselves, because no one really wants to buy it. If it's a jungle, it doesn't help. But it's the bank's responsibility, right, if it's a foreclosure.
yes.
Otherwise, if it's not, whose responsibility? The owner?
The owner, if there's,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it doesn't fall on the realtor in any way, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
if they wanna make a sale, they might get over and cut
Right,
the grass.
right.
Yeah.
Because I had called the realtor by us, and there was garbage on the porch, but I just thought, who knows? If I haul it to the street, they might say, oh, those old mops, we wanted them, you know? But I guess, I know that's a problem, you know, it's getting those banks to ante up. But we can cut it and then charge them.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, we'll spend some time looking this over, but I think we've complied with our charter requirement, which is what we wanna do.
And then who will, I think it's a valid thing to mention to Fred, as we look at this in the future, making more sense of why we're doing what we're doing. Are you gonna talk to him about that, or?
Yeah. Item number 5 is November tax renewal.
Okay, as I mentioned at the council meeting, this is the 3.89
Right.
mills. It generates approximately $184,000 for us annually. It must be to the county no later than August 8th. They, again, have changed the deadline. It used to be 75 days, now it's 90 days. So that would be the absolute day that somebody needs to go down with it in their hands. So I'd hate to push it that close, but August 8th, if need be, would be that date.
Okay.
Sorry, can I backpedal just for a second?
Sure.
On the the possibility of adjusting the charter, with the county needing it by July 20th, is there a valid date or anything closer helps? Does that make sense? Where this becomes more of a legitimate process?
Yeah, what I thought I'd do is just bring up the issue and let somebody from the charter committee contact these two and work out that
Okay.
date.
I just didn't know if maybe there isn't an option based on what the county is doing at the last minute.
Yeah, unless you could somehow tie it to the county, like
Okay.
within so many days of
Of
receiving it from the
receiving.
county, but we're still totally dependent on when we get it from them. And don't they typically extend
Yeah,
their
they
meeting
file
deadline?
an
They have to-
extension.
yeah,
I mean-
the county extends.
The frustration for me is we don't get it in enough time that we don't get enough good information that's credible in a time that we can work with that information and come up with something. So you start with something that's placeholders more than anything else, and it doesn't give the public a chance to look at it and say, wow, why is this going on, or why is that going on?
Well,
or-
the actual deadline in the state of Ohio is like June 20th, and Hamilton County always files for like a 1-month extension. I have no idea why it would be set up in Ohio like that.
And in some ways, because of the budgeting cycle, it's just an annual budget, it's not a 2 or 3 or 5 year at this level. You're starting to work on the budget, and we really only have financials for 4 months
Mhm.
of the
Yeah.
current year,
Yeah,
so it's crazy.
yeah.
It is
Okay.
crazy.
Thanks.
Okay, anyway, on this one, we have two pieces of legislation. The first one would be, where council by resolution requests that the county certify the dollar amount that would be generated by a certain millage, in this case 3.89 or whatever other scenario you might want to consider. I did talk to Jeff Forbes about that. I think it would be the safest, if we're gonna do that, to do multiple resolutions if you wanted to find out what different dollar amounts would officially generate. So just know that you can do that if you're interested in finding out those would be.
My initial thought was to send down two, one at the current millage, in the hopes that it'll still produce 184, although there's probably some slippage there, I would guess.
I mean, it's really bizarre how they figure it. But
we don't have any tax levies right now that in the last year have produced more than what we thought. They've all gone.
In fact,
They've all
that
gone down.
184, I think that was a recent number, wasn't it?
Oh, that is a
Kim got
recent number.
early from them on
Okay.
what that would generate.
I guess here's send down the 3.89, and then send down one for 90% of that, which would be cutting it in round numbers about 16,000, and use, because we're gonna gain on the refi, we're gonna gain about 20,000 a year, 24,000. 20 a year. So see if we can use the refi to give that money back to the taxpayers. What I don't want to do is have $20,000 in inflationary costs in our regular budget that we can't cover now because we recommended to the taxpayers that we'd cut your tax bill, and then have a problem. So,
Or what about the 2015, 2016?
yeah, or we're not accumulating funds fast enough. So I guess just from a conceptual standpoint, are you concerned with that second option?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
And I think we both are, but I can tell you right off, in looking at like year in last year.
Yeah, and let me say this, too. I don't think we can cut our way to success.
Right.
It costs a certain amount to run government, to have police protection, to have streets, to have fire protection, to do the essentials of government. I don't see tons of things in our budget that could be slashed and cut.
That's just what I was gonna say. We really cut, and we did good through 2011. It was a combination of things. We really cut a lot of spending, but the other thing that really helped us make it was an unanticipated estate tax, which, yes, because we're non-voted dead, but short of that, wow, we kind of hurting right now. I mean, it's not that we're in good shape anyway, but it wouldn't be a very rosy picture, and because that's going away, I mean, we were lucky. Maybe we'll be lucky yet this year before it's totally gone in that regard. But, yeah, I'd sure hate to take away any source of money we have at this point in time.
Okay. On the 3.89 tax renewal, what is the, how long is that for? How many years?
So is that a 5-year?
5 years.
Yeah, I was thinking we would be in a better position to decrease, maybe the next 5 years, because at that point we'll be past those big humps.
Well, then the whole property ownership and all that
Let me share
hopefully
this
will be
with you.
part of that.
Yeah, we have.
These are our levies, and I only have 3 of these, but I'll give it to you as soon as we finish looking off.
That's
over
fine.
here.
Thanks.
Our next one then will be in 2014. That's a relatively small one, although you really can't throw out the dollar amounts because you always have to figure the year of and based on valuation. That's a road improvement one. Then after that we have the recreation went up again. Same year, it looks like we also have the pool would go away. That was a 20-year bond for
Right.
the pool, so that one would fall off. So just to give you a picture, these do have expirations. The other 20-year bond on the streets, that's a really big one, falls off in 2016.
Mm.
So that's, and those don't get renewed because they were one-time expenses.
No, this is good. So I'm hearing from the administration that there's some reluctance to try and cut that 3.89. Well, let me ask you the opposite question. Not that I'm advocating this by any means. Are you comfortable we can make it at 3.89? And you don't have to answer it now. You don't have to answer it now.
Wow.
I honestly, I didn't even take that into consideration. I was just thinking, we can't cut. I wasn't thinking, could we go more?
Well, I don't want to take money from taxpayers just because we
know.
think we could pass it or
Right.
could. I want to make sure that if we need a whole loaf, I don't want to ask for half and say, hey, thanks for passing it, but now we're in trouble.
Right.
You know, we have to lay off, you know, a shift of police officers or something. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And I think those questions should be asked no matter what. You should stretch in both directions just because it's a good exercise. And that's always a little bit of a crystal ball situation. You don't
Sure,
know
there's
what
100 moving
income's
parts.
doing,
The one thing that I feel good about is that we're keeping our expenses under on a monthly basis. We're
Right.
keeping our expenses under our revenues, which is always very good.
Sure.
Things
Sure.
like that help because we really are trying to cut and not do anything we don't have to do.
But I don't
so
want to.
I want to think about that one a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. What I don't want to do, I mean, I think we've cut things. I don't want to get 3 years down the road and say, we deferred maintenance on a roof, we deferred replacing,
Tools under-
yeah, a bunch of things, and now we have,
Storm sewers.
yeah, we have emergency
Yeah, we have
expenses
big-
coming at
We
us.
have big expenses coming in those items.
I think we have to look, also, there's something about the bigger context. I can tell just by what I'm seeing with the schools, what they're gonna be asking for survival purposes also colors the picture.
I had a discussion with the school board president, and they will most likely be asking for some kind of bond sometime next calendar year. So, that's good that we don't have anything next calendar year. So they can stand on their own and.
Right, and see how that fares. Because I don't see them having more money.
No. I mean, they're looking at something from a facility standpoint.
Right, for the middle school areas.
Well, they are now in the queue for the Ohio School Facilities Fund, where it's essentially, don't hold me to these exact percents, but for reconstruction of buildings, and the state kicks in 30% roughly of what it costs. So they're looking at how many school buildings do we need for the next 40 years?
Mhm.
Where should they be located at? And then Bon and I are on that.
Sure.
So we'll get fired up again on the fall, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know the timeline, we know the millage, we know the current amount that it's producing. Okay. Yeah, we can just have some sidebar discussion. If you think 3.89 we can still handle, but I'm hearing if we cut it, we could be cutting our throats. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's, okay. And I can clearly see that, because, I mean, you look at, in 10 and 11, inheritance tax was over $300,000 we're losing, and we've been getting $82,000 a year on local government, and that's going to zero next year. You know, so that's a lot of revenue to lose. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
There comes a point when you have to have a discussion and say, we can't cut any farther. So.
And you know that there'll be people that say, hey, you don't need this and you don't need that, which is a bigger discussion. I think that there's a bigger halo than just numbers and police force and things like that. I had taken the chief had taken me a tour, asked him to show me around a little bit, and I was surprised to see a cabinet full of guns they had confiscated, and you know, 20, 27, maybe more guns that, you know, if we are sharing services, I'm not sure that would have happened. But there, and also I mentioned from a community development standpoint, but I'm just laying it out there that it's one thing to say, hey, we've cut to the bone. Well, we also, like you recommended last time, if we got into real trouble, what has to go, what has to give, and we should have a priority list, and you know, God forbid that happens, but I think we're doing what we need to do now, which is good.
Sure, and I do have a concern from a balance standpoint on the revenue side, that that people that are paying income tax are paying roughly $1 million into our general fund. If I got that number right, yeah, roughly $1 million. And if that portion of our total revenue continues to increase, as opposed to property taxes and money that we get from the state, well, people aren't going to want to come here to live if they're in the working part of their life, and they are going to love to stay here because in retirement, because the working people are paying a bigger share of the burden for services. And so I think we need to be a little careful about that.
I almost also want to always couple that conversation with how much goes to school, you know,
Oh, sure.
as well.
Yeah, I mean, I tell citizens, these aren't exact numbers, but if you take $1 that you pay in property tax, 50 cents is going to this, a little more than 50 cents is going to the school, a little less than 25 cents is going to the county, and about 25 cents is going to the village. So, and actually, when we knock off the pool in 2015, that number's changing.
Yeah.
It's like,
But it's going to also need some ongoing attention too.
sure.
So, and I don't know, just a quick question, when people are touting, hey, we've got wildly over the top or the highest taxes around and that kind of thing, how do you respond to that?
I live in Wyoming. I live in Wyoming, and I will be glad to move to Greenhills. Let them come and pay my tax rate for a while.
And kind of also, what do you get for that? Because, well, if our taxes are a little higher, but we pay your garbage bill, and that
Right.
neutralizes
Well, that's
each
what I mean.
other,
It's
so
not-
that it's
well, it's not
not.
always an apples to
They
apples.
haven't cut services yet.
Right.
So that's.
Well, and how do they do that where, when you were calculating, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but yet people compare a figure that might include services that other places don't include? Is there?
That's
and I'm
where
just
the
bringing
devil's in the
this-
details, and it gets lost.
Right, but is there a way, and I'm just doing a small bit of brainstorming, is there a way for us to pull components out and let them stand on their own, like other places are, so that we're not discredited, and make it more of a fair comparison? Does that make sense?
I think so. You know, you have to couple it with their sources of revenue too, though. You know, if you're looking at the expenses,
Right.
Townships, for example, they don't have the income tax, they're heavily reliant
Right.
on the property tax. You know,
They get a bigger share of local
Wyoming, the
government.
school also has an income
Income
tax in addition to a property tax, just like the
In
community
addition
does. So
to
you'd have
a-
to look at their whole composition.
What I'd like to do, and I think it would help out community development as well, I would like to put this in the form of easy digestible information that people could look and get it right away. Because I know the danger of having one thing. The minute when you're trying to develop a product or service and you say, hey, ours cleans 50% better than everybody else out there. Ford used to say, you know, #1 selling car. Well, if you extract rental cars at that period of time, it was not really the number
Right,
one.
they sold, because they owned Hertz, I think.
Right,
at the time.
right. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens, but whenever someone makes a claim on the positive or on the negative, highest taxes around, I think, and I'm not trying to create a false sense of information, I want accurate information. And when someone can use that as a one-liner, you got a bunch of people saying, wow, I'm not moving
must
to
be
Green
true.
Hills, it must be true.
Yeah.
They don't look into the details.
Mhm.
So I think it's necessary to repackage it, not to deceive, but repackage it to clearly talk about the facts. And if we are truly #1, okay, we must have a reason or we need to change. But I just think that, I'd like to, if people are responding to non-accurate information, we need a way to put that in front of them so they can understand.
Well, that would wouldn't that be as easy as just creating some kind of a chart and
I
say?
did want to say chart, because usually when I say that from me, it's like, oh, it just wants to make a picture of
Yeah.
everything.
Here's
But-
here's the other
An art
communities,
degree.
Yes.
here's the taxes that they pay,
Yeah.
and you would have taken into all the taxes, property taxes, school
Right.
taxes, income taxes,
What-
all of that.
What are those
And what do
two
they
apples?
get?
Right,
Okay,
Do they pay for garbage, do they pay for
Right.
tree pit, whatever.
right.
what
brush.
would we, and I think it's a good idea, and I think it's valid, and I think intuitively I know some of the answers just from talking about it previously. What would, who would be the customer of the information? Because I can think of, it might be good, we've got another homeowners thing coming up,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It might be good for that to
Right.
say, here's what you get for here's what it costs and here's what you get.
Right, and also one thing that came up during the idea session that we had, and I have to look at it a little closer, I guess there's some false information or misleading information about how something's calculated. I don't know if it was the multiple family dwellings. I'll look into that, but they were
From a valuation standpoint.
evaluation standpoint where what was going on amongst the realtors is, don't go here because of this, and it wasn't accurate. And I couldn't just roll it off the top of my tongue, but I think
Remember the topic.
the audience, to me, the audience is everybody. Because I think if people are not working with accurate information, we need to be equipped to concisely hand them a piece of paper and show them and answer those kind of accusations almost. But then I also see it as your house, what is it called, the homeowner, the home buyers thing, but it could be part of a packet. We could send it out to realtors. I think we want an accurate, concise picture, because the one-liner is, got the highest taxes around. Well, that's an arrow to the heart. Now, if it's true and you don't like it, okay, then we can deal with it. But I don't get the impression that it's accurate. I think that there's...
May I add that in my life, I have lived in Wyoming, Springfield Township, and Arlington Heights, and every single place I've ever lived, everyone has always said, we've got the highest taxes around.
Well, but they're actually making more of a solid claim,
Okay.
know.
I just,
Right,
Yeah.
but I
Right.
understand that everybody feels that way, but they are holding on to it under a certain context that is fact. Now, it's not fact if somebody else is not paying for a service and they pay, or they have an income tax and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Would I work with Kim to put that kind of chart together, or?
Probably some of each, and we
Okay.
can get some information through Center for Local Government that will help us. Just
Okay.
realize that it's kind of a moving target, because every day people change services, every day people find, well,
Okay.
everybody does, they don't
Right.
find new sources of revenue every day, but they might change it, or change the formula, or change the
Okay.
percentage. But certainly in terms of delivery of services, you know, people who used to collect brush are not collecting brush, are not collecting leaf, you know, there's.
Or are they
So those
charging where
things
they
are
once didn't
changing
charge?
rapidly,
Okay.
but we can certainly try to do, you know, snapshot
Yeah.
time, but we're gonna, wanna
Okay.
keep it updated. But I have some generic comments to make regarding this whole discussion though, and certainly tax levies are one issue, but, you know, one of the best things we can do is development, and that doesn't
Right.
mean large-scale development. That means improving our existing housing stock, so next time
Right.
everything, the valuations all go up.
Yeah,
You know, our valuation went from like 61 million down to 53 or 54 million. It was
Okay.
a huge drop,
Sure.
and that's impacting all of our levies, so. And then the income tax, you know, we should always hope that our businesses or withholding are the ones paying more than our residents, when it comes to income tax. So we need to do some things that are gonna generate jobs and not waste property on, you know, non-productive uses, what very limited property we have.
the warehouse thing you were talking about.
Yeah, just to mention one. So those are things we can do to help the residents, you know, to lessen their tax burden by, you know, increasing our tax burden, increasing our tax base, getting more people paying towards these things, and that'll help everybody.
Okay, I mean, I don't wanna make a bigger deal of it, but, you know, it's
And,
almost
well,
like.
one more thing I forgot,
Sure.
and obviously we are a residential community, not a
Sure.
commercial, and that's, we will always have higher taxes than,
Evendale.
you know, Evendale or, you know, Blue Ash,
Blue
my
Ash.
God, he has jobs out the wazoo.
But you know what, I
things
don't wanna
like
be
that,
Sycamore
so,
Township either, because I drove by that fire station yesterday and my heart sunk,
Yeah,
thinking that they laid off 14 firemen. And I don't care what anybody says, bringing in a couple of part-timers or whatever to try and fill some of that is not gonna provide the same level of service. And, you know, we just have a phenomenal level of service at a very low cost here.
we sure do, and that, you know, there's townships, they did a lot of those on one-time monies, like the
Mhm.
state and
Sure.
sources of money that
Well,
were
and that-
insecure, and now, yeah, wow.
Well, and one thing
It's gotta be,
um,
it is killing them.
I met with somebody, I won't get specific, but they were saying, oh, I'm not big on grants and stuff, and I'm going, well, Yvonne's really tapped into that. I mean, is that also another form of finding money, you know, based on historical status or, you know?
You know, it's not gonna help with your operating, but it
Right,
can
but it doesn't-
supplement, so money that you might have spent on something,
Right.
if you can get a grant for it, you're not having to spend your
Sure.
general fund money.
Well, and I think, you know, based on our past and our history, I would think, like you've mentioned, that we're more of a candidate than somebody else to get some of that grant money.
I would think so. Mhm.
In general, I am a fan of getting grant money for projects and one-time expenses, and not a fan of getting grant money to hire a cop for 2 years, and then you look down the road.
Do they actually
Right,
offer
and then
that?
you have
Yeah,
the-
they do?
you have
Yeah.
the COPS
Oh, really?
program, but then you have to guarantee that you're gonna,
Okay, so that's kind of
Yeah.
like an introduction to, your first month rent is free.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing, it's the same principle of, I'm not a huge fan of somebody coming up here and saying, Uncle Louie was a great guy, I'd like to put a bench here and I'll pay for the bench. Because then, 3 years later, we've got one more bench in Greenhills to
Right.
paint.
Right, well, and I'm working on an option that might adjust the painting of benches. Found a guy that does, it's not the, what is it, Terex, the art, you know, but there's another company out there that would give us recycled plastic beams for the benches. So, could we solve the painting problem? But you're right, we like the world of benches.
Anything else on the November tax? I think we left there a while ago. Okay. Anything else that we need to talk about today?
yes.
Yeah.
I thought of a couple things.
Yeah.
One in particular, we have a situation, if you might remember with Mike Castor, we had to do a special overtime rate agreement about a year ago, I think we did it, because he works at Spoils sometimes,
Right.
so point being, he should be compensated at a different rate for that than when he's working service. We have at least 2 other employees who, it's not necessarily an overtime issue per se, one's actually part-time, but works in 2 different locations, at 2 different pay rates, and we have to, council needs to be, ratifying that action
Okay.
for us to be able to do it, so I didn't
And why
have
is
time to
there 2
generate.
rates?
Because they're doing a more
They're
skilled
working
job part of
two
the time and a
different-
less skilled
yeah.
part of the time, and we're not gonna pay them at the higher
Got
rate
it,
for the
got
less
it.
skilled.
Okay.
What I was gonna talk to Jeff about is just coming up with like the same format agreement, but that one's specifically for overtime. So something that we could use, that council could approve our use of, and then when we find these situations, we could be entering into these agreements. So there's at least 2 that I will have to be getting to you, and I guess the right thing to do would be to have a retroactive. So are you
That's-
agreeable to that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm glad you brought it to our attention.
Okay, and then there's a similar piece, but in general, we have now passed the employee handbook. And actually, I don't know if this is the right committee to bring this up or not, but there's a couple situations that, when I had introduced it to council, I was hoping would not be in effect, and that would be the vacation carryover issues, to give employees the whole year to adjust. And we, actually, I thought that was in the ordinance, but it was not in the ordinance, so at some point.
Is this just a correction to the handbook?
Well, it's just so that when we have our audit, Kim, I have asked her to don't make those adjustments till the first of the year, because I want to give employees the rest of this year on scheduling their vacation, and it's only going to be a 1-year carryover. That's the only element I believe that there's an issue with.
Yeah, I think leave time in general, I think is what.
Well, you're right, because that includes the personal days and the whole
Because
bit.
you
It
gotta
would take
approve for
effect
that.
January 1st, so, it's been approved, but those pieces, we don't want to have go into effect until January 1st, so.
Yeah.
Just bring something to council and we'll
Okay.
handle it in council.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
You got anything?
No.
Jeff?
Good.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor?
No?
Yes.
Sure.
Good work. We've got a little reading to do, but appreciate all your work. Presentation and the requests.
You didn't talk to Tommy about the things, if you've got them?
No, I have not. I
Okay.
have it right on the list,
Okay.
but I don't, but that kind of makes sense.
All right.
He
Just to
would,
make
and he
sure.
wouldn't know to be bringing it back here.
Sure. And then,
I worked almost all